Hello, travelers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens. My name is Tim, and this week, together with Citi's E for Education campaign, we're going on a journey to explore how global citizens can put that valuable skill set to work as part of a global career. Throughout this week, we'll be connecting with Citi employees in 9 financial capitals across 6 continents. They have generously agreed to share their stories, observations, and tips for finding success in this highly interconnected global economy. For a complete listing of Citi Global Career Journey live stream events, you can check out athome.reachtheworld.org. Today, we're concluding the Citi Global Career Journey with a stop in Kampala, Uganda, to speak with Citi employee Billy Katungi. Billy is joining us virtually to talk about working, living, and thriving professionally in Kampala. Before we meet Billy, though, I want to welcome the teachers, students, Reach the World travelers, and early career professionals who are watching this live stream today. Please use the YouTube chat bar to let us know you're here, where you're joining from, and to share any questions you have for our guest as we go. We'll get to as many questions as we can in the next 45 minutes. And with that, I think we're ready to go. Billy, welcome to Reach the World.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. Appreciate you joining us. It's about 10 o'clock on the East Coast of the United States, about 5 o'clock in Kampala right now. So you're just finishing your work day. And I appreciate you spending a little bit of time at the end of your day with us. I want to dive right in because we're so lucky to talk to you today. Let's start talking about your personal career journey. I'm curious to know how you first became interested in working for a global company like Citi, and what did your path to that sort of a job and career look like?
Thanks, Tim. I'll just dive right into why I ended up the how and why I ended up where I am today. So at the end of my high school, about 2008, that was again at the height of the global financial crisis. So that was happening globally. I bet you had a few lessons in that. So I had to ask, and that's about the same time I had to ask myself the same questions around, where would you like to end up career-wise? So I thought that there were so many people telling everyone where to put their money, and there were not that many telling them where not to put their money, so to speak. I'm just trying to summarize the whole financial crisis. So there were a lot of bad decisions made then. So I thought to myself, it might make sense to get into risk, but financial risk. So I just put those two together and thought any career for me that's financial and adds the risk component, I think is a good idea. So at that point, I wasn't thinking I wanted to go global or I wanted to work for this firm or that. I was just thinking broad direction. So school is done, that's high school. I'm thinking, oh, what should I do with this break I have? So I walk into the biggest hospital near my hometown, still the private biggest healthcare facility in the country. And I basically asked for, a volunteering gig. Okay, I just want something to do, give back to the community while, I make all these decisions around school. So they let me do a few things here and there. I did them well, so I stayed. So for the following 3 years, every time I had a break, a week or a month, I would just go back and just help out. So that started opening me up to, fine, I want to do finance, but you can do finance in healthcare. So I started checking that out and thinking, okay, this is good. So at some point, someone gives me a call and says there's these camps. We're trying to bridge the gap between medical tourism in Uganda and India. So these specialists can come down as opposed to people always having to fundraise money and fly for these expensive operations. So I do a few of those. So you're just organizing quick camp, free healthcare checkups. So that starts getting interesting because now I'm interacting with people, specialists from other countries. Fast forward, I joined, it was a nonprofit youth type group. At this point, at the university now, college, so to speak. And I'm trying to look for similar opportunities that get me doing something, get me interacting with people from diverse backgrounds. So I ended up at the United Nations Association for Uganda. It's like a youth-led chapter. They're all affiliated under the World Federation for the UN. Again, I'm looking for these sorts of opportunities. I haven't yet narrowed it down to what I'm looking for, but this is how my thought process was expanding. So at the same time, I'm doing class. At that point, I'm doing a bachelor's program in finance. So I'm also doing all these other projects that are kind of outreach related, going out, whether it's teaching literacy classes. We had one project in Nairobi. So I'm seeing the world in very many different avenues from all these ventures. And that's when it started occurring to me that I think this finance that I want to do, I think that this is a scale I want to do it at. And that scale has got to be the global scale. So I got myself into an exchange program. It was at Drake University in Iowa. And so it was about a 2 month program, half spent in Uganda, about 2 weeks, and another interim project timeline in there. But so I come to Iowa in February, was time to come. And so I get to interact with all these other students from, different backgrounds, also in finance, and we're thinking we can do this, we can do that. So again, my thought process is expanding into, what is this global citizenship thing like? So at all that point, I'm getting, all this kind of exposure and mentorship and networks. So that's when I made the decision that whatever I wanted to do or where I was going to end up, it's going to be an organization that allowed me to continue doing these things. So that's how I ended up picking Citi. I thought that by picking this organization with its global reach, it still is, and you can correct me on that, but I think I am correct, is that right now the largest bank in the world by footprint, close to 100 countries today. And I thought that by choosing this organization, I would never have to choose again, because then that means anything else I would want to do, the organization could accommodate it, whether it's a department, it's a country. So I thought this must be the best pick. So when I got into Citi, I got myself into the corporate and investment banking department then. So so basically getting into credit, raising capital for clients. So as an analyst, 2 years later, I got into this management fast track program. So that was the Middle Eastern Africa analyst program. So I did a short stint in South Africa and Kenya as well. And then 2 years ago, I got posted into what I'm doing now. So right now I'm doing corporate FX sales. So I just sell currencies, to put it plainly. But it is a lot that goes with that, trying to facilitate payments cross-border, trying to get into hedging. We have an election coming up. I know the US, it's in a few days. Ours is early next year. So a lot of multinationals that are operating here would be worried, ideally, in terms of what is going to happen. So we help them have those kind of difficult discussions around hedging their exposures and all that. So that's what I do now. But when you ask me if I knew where I was going to end up, at that point when I walked into the hospital, I wouldn't say yes. But I think what was clear then was that I wanted to do something, and that the scale had to be at that level, at global level. So I've just tried to rush through my story. That way we can then pick which parts you want to dig deeper into. So I don't know if team that works.
That was very interesting journey. I note, especially having spoken with a bunch of your colleagues this week, that you're one of the people who identified an interest in finance at really a young age. A lot of your colleagues have come to finance through really roundabout ways, but seems pretty early that was a skill set and something that you wanted to get into.
Yeah. I don't know whether it was the numbers, because that has always come easy for me, the math. So I always thought I've got to stick next to the numbers. I love history, but I didn't do so well. So.
All right, very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Let's move into sort of what it's like to live and work in Kampala specifically. I have to ask you about your background, not your personal background, but the background on your Zoom call right now. This is one of the views we haven't gotten this week yet, with all the monitors, and it looks like multiple clocks on the wall. What is your everyday workday like?
So the screens is basically to allow me look at a significant number of things all at once. Most of it feeds into how I price a client. So clients are always on the go. I need this quick. Okay, I wouldn't like to mention names, but I'm a multinational X. I'm in Uganda. I would like to pay this amount of British pounds in that country. And also I have US dollars coming in. I would like Ugandan shillings. Could you let me know how, at what point you would price me to borrow this amount of money overnight? So I kind of have to have all these benchmarks, live and available to me as I have that discussion, and as well as multitasking the day-to-day, whether it's emails, phone calls, Zoom calls, and all that. So the extra monitors to have all that in my face at the same time. The clocks is just so you don't have to think. It might be easy when you work within the same time zone, but if you have to constantly interact across time zones, your morning meeting was with people 2 hours behind you, and then your afternoon meeting was with people 3 hours ahead of you. So to just give the mind a break of having to have all this information. So we put it all around ourselves. So that's what the monitors are for. And this is basically for my treasury role. The products that I deal with technically, FX conversions outright. You have this currency, you're buying that currency, or you're looking to swap the currencies, you're looking to borrow money overnight in a different currency, or you're looking to structure a solution. You have funding. You're a nonprofit in Uganda, Reach the World, and you're maybe funding this project in Uganda, but your donors are in the US. So you'd like for that to be streamlined. You'd like for me to set up a portlet for you that allows you to access a self-service portlet to allow you to access our systems and do a lot of these payments for yourself. So all this allows me to do that in real time, very quickly.
All right. What are the two clocks set to, just out of curiosity? Which time
So
zone?
that's Kampala and London. So I was joking with Team earlier how London needs a battery change. But there's others that are not visible. So there's also New York and Singapore.
Okay. All right. You always have to know what time it is.
Yeah.
In other markets.
The 4 time zones, yeah.
Fantastic. In terms of living and working in Kampala specifically, how would you describe your office environment? What sort of skills do you need to be successful in your particular office?
So why I started off with all that exposure that I'd had was to kind of set the scene for how I would answer this question. So to the outsider, and I'm able to see this because then I have had the opportunity to collaborate and work with and do projects in other countries. So then I'm able to look back and see, okay, so that's a bit different. So Kampala is a very friendly country, small, just about 40 million people. The city center is about 1.5 million at night. It goes up to about 5 million during the day, and we have only one city. So it's a pretty small place in the grand scheme of things. So it's fairly friendly. A lot of the people kind of know each other because there weren't that many schools, there weren't that many universities. So chances are your networks and circles have met. It's like having one state in the US. So it's like about one state in the US. So probably smaller than most states even. So you have met, interacted with each other. So bringing that down to Citi in particular, it's a very small family of about 50 people. So you get the friendly vibe going despite all that's happening. So in the background, we're enabling all this progress and meeting all these client needs and value, but it comes off as a very friendly thing. Now, to answer your question and to give better perspective to the people watching, it would easily come off as less aggressive as a work culture. That's often misconstrued as perhaps a less than desirable level of ambition. And that's because there's a strong cultural influence for most of the people that grew up and have been raised in Uganda to be very, very polite. If you've read The Outliers, one of the reasons that Malcolm attributed, the research attributed a lot of the plane crashes to was the power distance. The fact that it's okay for me to just say, Tim, I don't like that jacket you're wearing. In some cultures, and in others, I would have to say it in 50 different ways. but all being very respectful of how I bring it out, and the different status levels I have to go through if you're a male of this age and all that. So there's a lot of cultural influence around how we communicate. So to someone looking from at the outside looking in, it easily come off as too laissez-faire and friendly, which could mislead you in terms of how much you need to have going on in terms of skills and knowledge to make it. So it is very competitive, but it often comes off as very friendly. So you get I don't know, a beach vibe, but in the middle of New York on an 8 a.m. Monday morning type. So you've got to be very, very aware of the fact that despite all the politeness and everything that you get because of the cultural influence and how we communicate, you have got to deliver to someone in London, Kampala, Singapore, and New York the same way that they would find or get the service if they were in any other city branch. So that's how I would paint the picture for someone looking to contrast, the work environment.
Very interesting, very helpful. Thank you. You've obviously found a lot of success there. What do you like personally about living and working in Kampala?
The weather, it's like 20 to 25 degrees Celsius all year round. That's probably like summer all year round. Until recently, the rains were predictable as well. So I do believe that there's some climate change happening. So it's a little bit off these days, but you just get a bit of rain, nothing compared to the storms that ideally other places in the world have to deal with. So I like the weather, the people, and I think over time people have gotten comfortable with the political risk in the country. So there's a fair chunk of offshore investment moving in terms of whether it's in the nonprofit space or in the multinationals setting up headquarters just nearby in Kenya, or a significant, operational office here. So I like the opportunities that are here, and the cultural diversity. Kampala itself is fairly diverse. You'd easily find francophone oriented people, lots of people coming in from the Asia Pacific region, a little bit of South America, but largely the EMEA region, Europe, and a bit of the US. So I think it's culturally diverse, good weather. I like the opportunities here. And despite being here probably 99.9% of my life, I still find new things to do, new places to go, and interesting things that I find out every day about the country. So I think it is the Pearl of Africa, and I think that was for a reason.
I'm going to come back to your local recommendations for if we come and visit you in Kampala. I want to know what we need to go and see and do, but I'll save that for the end. It's always a good way for us to end. I want to sort of move on. That's a great overview. Thank you. I want to move on to any specific career advice that you would have for young people who are, have a particular interest in Uganda or are interested in working in East Africa and just, don't know where to start or don't know what they would need to do or what they should practice or special skills that they would need to accumulate in order to be successful in that market. Any advice for that group?
Okay, so I'll just break that down into two things. One are the actual skills, and then two is there's the abstract bit of this, things you can't put a finger to, but they would help you. They would help you go a long way. So skills, in the era that we're in and how fast things are changing, I would say you've got to be. I think to say computer literate is a very, very, big understatement. You've got to be very capable in that space. And I'm not just saying, being able to keep in touch with your friends on social media. You've got to look into, how do I monetize that? Am I able to get in touch with friends while selling something? So communication, being able to sell, being able to market, I think that's something that is growing in demand each passing day. The ability for us to present a value proposition in a way that the end user or the client understands it. I think that's something that is timeless, and you've got to have that, you know, up your sleeve. And then a few of the technical skills that are found to be, you know, relevant everywhere you go is you've got to have a certain sense of project management. It could be from, you know, you being able to run with Excel and do a timesheet, a Gantt chart, schedule things here and there, but a sense of being able to organize things, uh, a plan that fits into a bigger plan that fits into, say, a program or work plan for the year. So that sense of being able to put things together, add some numbers to it, quantify this project or aspects of the project. So something to do with numbers. There's a lot of programs that can help with that, whether you go deep into, say, programming, or shallow at about, you know, end user friendly things like Excel, or Google Sheets, or whatever you'd like to say. But a little bit of that I think, is a bit timeless. And then I would say, moving on to the abstract things, is emotional intelligence. Now on this, I would like to give a few examples. When I was, you know, getting, you know, trying to narrow down where I wanted to end up in my career, it wasn't that I knew exactly. I didn't know I'd be selling currencies today, but I went on narrowing it down, eliminating what I didn't want. And the only way I got to know what I didn't want was by trying out so many things. So if you have the opportunity, I like that this program is targeted towards an audience that is into traveling, when it can. So do a lot of that. You might not know what you want, but at least you could eliminate what you don't want. And as long as that is getting narrow, you do have easier choices to make. So travel as much as you can, because I think it's very important for you to always push yourself out of your comfort zone, especially on the cultural side, the lens with which you view other people, because, you know, like I said, if you have the skills I talked about at first, fine, you're the best programmer there is, but you simply can't work with people. In this day and era, we're just 50 in Kampala, but if you were to add up all the resources that back up this operation, you're talking about maybe 3 other hubs. So on a day-to-day, my teammates are in India, South Africa, Kenya, London on a day-to-day. So I've got to have that awareness. I may not be in the US, but I'm well aware of, you know, what's happening in terms of, you know, whether it's Black Lives Matter and what's happening there in Africa and Nigeria. There's a bit of protest building up in terms of, you know, with the police brutality. So you've got to have that global mindset. So that you're able to work with other people. That is not something that they teach you, but I would hope that with more experience and exposure to different environments, that would be something that would come in handy. And then lastly, I'll just touch on one of my biggest turning points. So towards the end of university, I did the summer school in France. It was an energy, and we're grouped into, you know, these different sets. And funny enough, we were going to cook, you know, of all the things you thought we'd be doing. These were engineers and business people and all together. And they said, okay, today we're going to make dessert. And so I was paired with someone, I won't mention the country, but it's one of those countries that is leading the way technologically in the world. One of the, I'd say, top 5 superpowers there is. And so long story short, we're given disposable cutlery and everything to cook. And then there's a shape that I wanted to create, and this container had a different shape. So I tell my partner, we need a different shape so we can go weigh how much chocolate we'll put in the bananas and blah, blah, blah. And while I turned around to raise my hand to look for the chef, that way I can tell him, I want this to look like this and not like this. My partner just cut the container into the shape we wanted. And that moment has never left me, because it spoke to the different cultural approaches we would have because of the way we were brought up. I was brought up to always ask first and then do. This was such a small project. These disposables didn't cost nothing. The idea was for us to destroy them while creating something new. And I was held back for a moment, trying to look for permission, trying to look for validation, and then someone was brought up to simply try first and then come and explain, oh, this failed, but this is what I learned. So that moment didn't leave me in the sense that it's very important to always put yourself in a position in which you can raise your hand. I think that that will take you places no matter where you go.
What a fantastic example. Thank you so much for sharing that. You mentioned two things that really caught my ear, just emotional intelligence and awareness. Both of those terms and what you get from traveling and seeing, meeting other people is something that a lot of our audience members are really discovering through their study abroad experiences and early forays into the global community. So that's such valuable advice. And with that, I'd really love to bring in one of our travelers, Anna, who's joining us today. I'm going to switch us over to gallery view here. Anna had a question for you, Billy. Anna, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
For sure. Thank you so much, Billy. I really enjoyed that. You're an excellent storyteller. And my question to you is, I guess, you've had quite a journey with an ultimate destination, but with a lot of maneuvers. And I was wondering if you have I guess a plan or a place that you really want to work in. So if, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And is there, is it in Kampala? And is there a specific place that you really dream of in living or working in?
Very good question there. Thanks, Anna. So with each passing day and the exposure that I get, I just keep getting to the realization that there's too much out there to see and to understand. So in terms of creating my 5 or 10 or long-term plan, in general, I've kind of instead narrowed it down to in which spaces would I like to be contributing, whether it's 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. And for me, it has remained technology and client experience. So if I'm at the front end, in the front office, or the sales, or the point, or the sales lead, or of anything that allows me to contribute in terms of technology and the client experience, I will be happy. That said, maybe to name drop, I haven't found an organization that is quite as diverse and that has the depth to accommodate almost every dream that I've ever had. And so I think that I will still be in Citi. But if that changes, it will be in a space that allows me to stay close to the client. I think that that's where the biggest amount of evolution, growth, innovation happens. If you're the one that is at that is standing between the organization and the client, if you're in that space, I think that is where the biggest amount of growth is, because the client always comes with challenges. And if you're the one, taking on these challenges, then you are growing. And because of what's happening in the technological advancement space and how technology is coming in to help our lives be easier and simpler, I would always like for that role to be very, very heavily intertwined with technology. So even in FX, our biggest selling point is not that Billy is able to talk to you. Our biggest selling point is that Billy is standing behind a certain machine that is able to, when he does get into this car, the car is able to allow him to do other things. So it's the technology that allows us to do all these great things. So for as long as there's technology and I'm in front of client, I will be happy.
All right. Great question, Anna. Thank you so much. I want to come back to you, Anna, if you have a second question, but I want to bring in first a question from our online audience. Billy, one of our watchers is wondering, for U.S. young professionals who are specifically interested in working in Kampala or another major city in Eastern Africa, what advice would you, what sort of concrete steps could they take to come and work with you or work with your colleagues and be successful?
Okay, so for starters, it is easy if you have a US passport to come to Kampala. It's that easy. You get to pay for the visa once you arrive. So I'd say look for volunteering opportunities, internships. I think that's always easy to get. No one is going to be, trying to test if you have all this or that skill. because I think that the expectations that come with those roles are are a bit less, smaller. So it allows you more time to then explore your interests, as opposed to if you came in directly into a very technical, highly demanding role, and then all you see is your room, hotel, or house, and the office, and so you don't get to first understand the environment before making the choice as to whether this is really what you want. So I'd say as soon as you can, and that's easy, whether it's just coming in to just tour and travel. One of the few places in the world you can see gorillas. There's fun things to do. You can come for that, or you can just like look for volunteering opportunities. There's a lot of demand for English speaking people who have time to give back, because a lot of education is a very big space here in Kampala for the non-profit space. So I feel like there's always a need for people who can just come and teach the kids English if you're looking for volunteer in a school. So that space is very big and there's a lot of demand for that. And that's very easy to get. If you got here within a week, you wouldn't fail to have such opportunities. But even if you were looking to have very, very technical roles just coming in, it's Uganda is fairly friendly on, say, work permits. And if you are bringing any of the skills I talked about earlier on, you have some technical skills that involve numbers. You have that cultural awareness and the exposure that is required to create solutions that are applicable to this environment. And that usually requires that maybe you spend some time here. That's why I thought maybe internships and volunteering would be an easy way in. And also multinationals, the number of multinationals that operate in this region. So if you were to track down some of those in the US and kind of find out how easy it is for you to apply for the jobs there, but specifically targeting, this placement, I think that would also be worth looking into, because a lot of people are not that mobile. So I would think that if you're applying in the US, probably you're looking to stay there or move somewhere nearby. No one is looking to move 8,000 miles. So I think that there wouldn't be that many people you would be competing with if you made your interests known that this is where you'd like to end up.
That's fantastic advice. Thanks for the online question. Thanks for the great answer, Billy. Anna, if you have another question, I want to give you a chance to ask it. Go ahead.
I guess this is more of a regional question, but as the tremendous amount of growth that the entire continent of Africa has experienced within the past decades, and the amount of investment from all over the world. And then I know that, I have a friend in Rwanda that I go to university with. And so then we've discussed a lot about how it's very possible that maybe all of the countries will become a lot more united and then be a powerhouse in the world market. So I guess how do you see Citi fitting into that, and what are your insights basically into that topic?
Okay, so in terms of uniting into a powerhouse, I would say there's a lot of progress in terms of because for you to unite, the few common themes you've got to address, whether it's common currency, common language, harmonizing trade tariffs, trade barriers, labor mobility. It's easier for me to come to go to Dubai than it is for me to go to South Africa. So, ironing out those kind of those kinks, to make everything streamlined. So there are a lot of working groups at the African Union level that are trying to identify these pillars, and they've narrowed them down. For example, in East Africa, one key thing is the infrastructure, just as harmonizing the rail network and air traffic, the taxes on air traffic, making it cheaper to fly around, labor mobility. So those themes have been identified, and I think that there's good progress being made because Africa represents a very big market for a lot of the end user products that come from the processing and industrialized countries. So it is a very important market for the world if it was speaking the same language in terms of trade negotiations. So it is a good idea to see to fruition, and there's progress on that. on my personal thoughts are that it should continue. I think it will, not just looking at what that means for the world, it also internally, I think that there's a lot of potential for us to work together. When you ask me where I would like to work or study, maybe 10, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have probably mentioned another African country. I would have probably jumped to another continent first. So just that progress of us trying to come together will allow for these kinds of thoughts to happen. Why isn't my first thought Namibia or Egypt? So it will also help us as a continent to do better. And how does Citi come in? So Citi and every other financial institution, of course, is coming in to enable this progress. So one of the biggest projects we've had, say, in East Africa has been the rail network, connecting Mombasa, that is all the way from the coast in Kenya to Uganda, and extending parts of this or through another means to Rwanda. So those are three countries that have probably the biggest flow of import and export goods in this region. So just implementing something as simple as a rail network. But the capital investment that is required to do that can only be done when banks and other financial institutions are coming together to enable that progress. So that's the role that Citi plays, enabling that progress. As part of our CSR, we invest in education initiatives. So just building the local capacity of Ugandans. That is Citi doing its role in enabling this progress. In terms of, say, activism on the gender equality front, Citi is well invested in equipping maidens, young women in upskilling themselves. Usually this is targeted towards at-risk ages for women, early young mothers, the widows, and that type of age group, and just upskilling them. That way, because it's very clear about how, empowering a woman does have these spillover effects into the family. So contributing to their upskilling, just so we can bridge that labor capacity gap, contributing to these capital intensive projects, and just bringing expertise here so that people can just get that kind of diverse skill set. Because the city has a lot of expatriate resources that come in and go. So just having that here would probably help me, see things differently. So I'd say that the role of financial institutions like Citi has been that, to just be at the forefront of enabling this progress, being that extra arm of the government through which they can act to implement these policies, whether it's rolling out, social welfare programs. And I think we've done a good job on that.
What a great question, Anna. What a great response, Billy. Thank you both for that great conversation. I've learned so much in the last 5-10 minutes, especially. We have, 5 or so minutes left in our event today, and I want to take a moment and just ask a really fun question. And Billy, you seem like the perfect person to answer this for us. For all of us now who desperately want to come to Kampala and see Uganda and take a look around, what would you recommend as our sort of local host to the area? What would you recommend that we do and what we couldn't miss while we were there?
For starters, the gorillas. It's one of the few places in the world, I think, where you can see gorillas in their natural habitat. And then it's pretty dense in terms of water bodies. So the Nile, as you know, does originate here. So there's very many water bodies that are attached to that whole flow all the way up to Egypt. The Lake Victoria, Albert is about 4 or 5 lakes that you can just check out. The diversity alone of people. We have a very, very, I think we have one of the most diverse bird populations in the world. So if you're into bird watching, this is a very nice place to be. And if that's your thing. We have one of the biggest music festivals picking up on the continent, Nyege Nyege. It's worth looking into. So it's a forest, and then people come in and spend a week, and then they go. Half of those people are not even Ugandans. So it's a very interesting thing to check out every year. This is the first time that it's not happening because of COVID, I think, for the last 5 years. What else? We have snow. only on one mountain though, but I just had to say that. We do have a snow-capped mountain that you can do. So mountain climbing, if that's your thing as well. A lot of water rafting type activities, you know, because we have a lot of falls along the River Nile as well. We're very rich mineral-wise, so you will be able to catch a lot of those rocky type mountains if you're into mountain climbing. If you'd like to check out gold, how people dig for gold, that's just something you can see. National parks, again, one of the few places you can see the big five if you're looking to do a safari. Yeah, that's some of the things that come to mind.
Well, you do an excellent job of selling it to people who are excited, already sort of excited.
Don't forget the weather.
And don't forget the weather, just to sort of cap it all off. What a great combination of things. Well, Billy, with that, I just really want to thank you. What a fascinating conversation this has been. Thank you for sharing your global career journey with Reach the World today. I want to thank also our entire on-camera and live stream audiences for the wonderful questions today. This is sadly the end of the road for Reach the World's Citi Global Career Journey. And what a journey it's been. If you missed any of our stops in London, Tel Aviv, New York, Sao Paulo, Seoul, Dublin, Singapore, Sydney, or Kampala, you can find recordings of those events at Reach the World's YouTube channel, where we've set up a special Citi Global Career Journey playlist. So you can relive any of the moments, go back, get any of the great advice that's been shared with us today or this week by our Citi guests. A special thanks overall to the Citi E for Education campaign and to all our many Citi volunteers for making these experiences possible. You can find the full lineup of upcoming Reach the World events at home.reachtheworld.org. Billy, it's been absolutely fascinating and wonderful to speak with you today. Thank you so much for your time and hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, team. Thanks, everyone at Reach the World.